Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, I welcome back Guus Krabbenborg. Guus is an entrepreneur, a business consultant, a trainer, and an author. He's written for us quite a bit in the past, and now he has a new book that we're going to be talking about. If you've heard Guus speak at an event or perhaps sat in on one of his training sessions, you'll know that he focuses a lot on the theme of digital transformation and how to practically apply it in the businesses of partners and customers working with or looking at Microsoft Business Solutions. We talk about what digital transformation really means in this context, some of the tension that customers face between IT and executive strategy, and some of the challenges that partners face in also navigating some of those tensions. We also talk about Guus's new book and an interesting approach that he is using to get that book out into the market. Okay, Guus Krabbenborg, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, Jason.
So you think a lot about one of the most important topics that's certainly relevant to our listeners and readers, digital transformation. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people talk about the future of business solutions and services delivery, but maybe you can start by talking about the kind of work that you do currently, the kind of help that you offer to organizations in the Microsoft ecosystem, so we can understand really where you fit into some of these issues.
Sure, yes, I can. So I started in this channel 20 years ago when I was the commercial director of Navision in the Netherlands. And over time, I changed roles. When I left Navision, started working alone, then became part of a company called Partner Masterclass, where we delivered Microsoft training programs, business programs to Dynamics partners all over Europe. I was one of the founders of a company called QBS Group, today the biggest Dynamics community worldwide. We're serving more than 1,000 Dynamics partners in 25 plus countries. I'm still a shareholder in QBS and still do activities, but I think I fit better in a smaller company, so I decided to start with a company called Dynamics and More. And you're talking now to the whole company, so that's me, myself, and I. And what I do is I deliver training, coaching, and inspiration, or some people might say that inspiration looks more like provocation. So that's sort of my style of presenting. I do a lot of workshops for partners, customers, and prospects. So working on both sides, in sales, on sales, marketing, project management, success in projects. And I think the last few years, my focus was especially on transformation. So business transformation, digital transformation. And next to workshops, I'm also presenter at various events. Could be Microsoft events like Inspire, or the Microsoft related events like Extreme, Directions, Summit, but also a lot of times at partner events speaking about transformation. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. And when we talk about the needs of, let's say, companies that are in the Microsoft channel today, the term digital transformation comes up a lot. How do you define it, and why is it different from just digitization?
So I think the word digital is used, a lot. Sometimes it feels like every third word in every second line seems to be digital these days. And what I see is that there is a really huge focus on the product side. So I do a lot of presentation at partner events, mainly all over Europe. And I often there, talk about digital transformation. And then, I say to my audience, tell me how many words is in the term digital transformation? Well, it's a simple question, right? And a simple answer, because it's typically 2 words. And then I would say to my audience, I think personally that in these 2 words, there is one relatively easy word, easy task if you want, and there's one relatively complex task. And please show me your hand if you know what the simple task is. And then in most countries, people don't show hands, but they start thinking rapidly. And then in the end, somebody will say, Guus, I believe that the word digital, or the job digital in digital transformation, to me seems to be the more easy part. And I agree with that suggestion, because the digital part, translated as digital products, that is something you can buy. And if you're lucky to be a Microsoft partner, or if you're lucky to be a customer from a Microsoft partner, you get choice from many nice products that over time integrate into something that's called a platform. So to me, I know there's maybe simply put here, but the digital part is the relatively easy part. The really interesting question, Jason, is also to audiences, who of you, please show me your hands, who of you believe that there is an article number in the Microsoft price list for transformation? And you can imagine in an audience, then it's silent. Some people start laughing. And if I then ask, why do you laugh? They say, Gus, it's really impossible to buy transformation from any vendor. And if I say why, then they say, well, this all starts with very customer specific situation, the strategy of the customer, the way they want to go forward, their people, their employees. How do we get them moving and how do we get them accepting the change? Very important in transformation, are the business owners or the senior management, are they able to live transformation, to be the example of transformation? So for me, there's a big difference between digitization, what is more product like, right? Let's digitize stuff, let's digitize processes, but often the existing processes and the existing reports and the existing mindsets, where to me, transformation means that you transform your business. And transformation of the business these days, to me, means putting your customer central in everything you do. But really, if I talk to people and say, what is central in your business, then people in the food industry say, my cake or my meat or my bread, by the way, is the best bread in the world. If I ask a Microsoft partner what's central in your business, they say our IP, our add-on, our project plan, but not the customer. So I think, in these days, we should use the step to digital transformation, not just to digitalize, but to transform and put the customer central in all we do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it raises, I would say, maybe two of the things that I'm always trying to inquire about. And I feel like it's sort of that perennial struggle. One is the executive sponsorship or the executive sort of vision and how that maybe differs from an IT project. And the other one we can come back to is, the focus on the customer and the focus on maybe customer experience, if that's where leadership, how leadership chooses to frame it. But one thing I feel like I do keep coming back to in interviews and in, customer case studies and things like that is, was there executive input? Was this being led by a vision that the team had to do transformative things to the company versus, just another IT project, I guess you might call it? That seems to be the tension. And it's not always, people don't always have a good answer for that. Is that something you have to challenge people on?
Well, I think, talking about sponsorship is something that we do as an industry for many years. My observations is that just talking is not enough. What I see is that, the role of the sponsor, a person that have enough position, enough power, to stop discussions, to take decisions and to keep speed in the project. The person that supports it in a way that everybody will say, let's do our homework better than we thought we should do. Let's spend more time. Let's make it a success. I think, we all have our ideas around the role, but in practice, it doesn't matter if it's a standalone ERP, a standalone CRM, or maybe an overall digital transformation process. Too often, unfortunately, we don't find the right sponsor. I made an analysis of some of the biggest failures that we saw over the last few years in the IT industry. One of the famous ones is the project that SAP tried to deliver at a German retailer, Lidl. And there was an interesting project in the sense that, separate from the money and the time they spent and didn't use, there was a hiccup because the employees of Lidl worked with an older system for 30 years in a different way, and they didn't want to change the process. Actually, it was about the valuation of stock. And the people in Lidl for 30 years, their fathers, their grandfathers, always valuated stock against purchase price. But SAP standard says we valuate against sales price. Well, to me, I would say interesting point, but not really important for customers and not really important for shareholders. I think if you and I go for shopping, Jason, I think most of us don't care about stock valuation. Even one step ahead. I think some people that do shoppings don't even know what stock is. They just want to buy stuff. So this is typically an example of internally focused discussion, completely irrelevant for stakeholders like your customers or your shareholders. Yet the people didn't want to change. And then the management from Lidl says, here's a lot of money. And after 7 years and spending $500 million, they decided not to go live. Now, the interesting point for me is to see who was responsible for this, let me say, failure. And guess what? What do you think? Who was responsible? Any idea?
Well, it would have to be the customer ultimately. I would think that the software company could defend themselves from that kind of a claim.
So little said, no blames to SAP because they delivered a standard product. No blames to our employees. They just said it won't work, and they just, spoiled $500 million. And the interesting point to me is the responsible person for this whole project was not the IT manager, was not the CFO, but the responsible person was the management. And I found out that if you make a group of people responsible for something, then in the end, nobody is responsible. If the group has the responsibility for success and failure, everybody will sleep well. So I believe really when you think about sponsorship, you need to find one single person with enough power. And before the project starts, we should communicate that this one person, right, is responsible for success and failure. I think every project needs somebody who cannot sleep at night because, we're behind and things don't go the way they should. But too often that is failing. One other example comes from the government. I recently spoke to a friend who is working for a vendor that delivers solutions for the local government in Holland. And he says everybody in the customer side understands how important sponsorship is. But he starts at the highest level in the administration company. And then they say, I know it's important, but I don't have time. And the second level said, we know it's important, we don't have time. So eventually nobody will take the job. Right? So from the customer side, this sponsorship sort of is not really a nice task to pick it up. And then if nobody does it, well, you can understand what will happen in the end, no change.
Yeah, and very often you also see, not very often, but you do see from time to time lawsuits against the vendor when a project goes badly. And, it's so interesting to read about those because you read these claims and it's just from the outside, there's really no way to know without seeing maybe all the evidence, all the depositions and so forth, really where it went wrong. A customer can claim these things, but like you said, there's so many points and reasons why it might not succeed, whether it's groups making decisions together and no one taking responsibility, or I guess a number of other causes. But yeah, it's an interesting point that having one person who can't sleep and knows that their career might even be on the line can really change the decision making and the perspective.
Yep. So let's say that's one perspective on sponsorship in general. I think if you think about the sponsorship for digital transformation, then I think it's one step beyond, because it's not just, with all respect, the implementation of a standalone piece of software. Digital transformation, to my personal opinion, is not, like you just said, is not just another IT project. This is really the moment where companies should refocus and put the customers central in all they do. And then once they've done that, which is more a mindset game probably than a software game, then they should find a business model that creates maximum added value for customers and maximum customer happiness. And once these things are done, customer central, finding the right business model, of course, then you need to find an IT system or an IT platform that supports the business model and the customer centricity. And I believe that the platform moves that Microsoft is making and even better integration over time really is a great platform and shows us a great future for supporting digital transformation, right? So again, this is something that the IT department can never do. It's not an IT project, and I think the project responsible person in any company could not be somebody else but just the CEO or the business owner. So the management has a crucial role here.
Do you feel like that partners in the Microsoft channel are comfortable talking to the right or having the right conversations with the right people in their prospect or in their client organizations to really plan out some of these needs? Or do they tend to fall back on talking to the IT department and perhaps planning projects and developing solution ideas based on maybe not talking to the full range of people who they should be?
Well, I think there's two observations that I can share here. One is that the ERP partner channel traditionally was talking to the people that were close to the project. And on the customer side, typically that was the role of the IT manager and the role of the CFO, the finance person. And in some cases, that's still the situation. And what I see is that many partners feel comfortable talking with IT people and finance people. I see many salespeople also in my trainings that say, Guus, I would love to have the time and the possibility to have a conversation with C-level. But the lucky ones that get access to the senior people often don't know what to say there. So it's an interesting observation that most of the people that get access, maybe by coincidence, often say, okay, your people lower in the organization says this is the budget. Is that correct? Or the people say this is the day to go live. Is this correct? So they use the C-level contact to get confirmation on different things and that might be interesting for a salesperson, but you can imagine that's completely uninteresting and unvaluable for a C-level person. So I think that once people get access, most partners have difficulties, maybe because it's relatively new for them, to bring a pitch that adds value for the C-level person. In general, I would say that functions and features is not very interesting for C-level people. These people think about emotions more than ratio, and the two most important emotions are risk and trust. So, question is, what can you do to bring trust, to build trust, and by the same time lower the risk? Education of C-level people is another thing that's very important, because most of the C-level people that have to take the decision and sign the contract, if you ask them, for most of them, it will be the first or maybe the second time in their life that they are responsible for such a project in the CEO role. Well, Jason, if I think about all the things that I did in my life for the first or the second time, no details here, but I wasn't always the best one, right? Because you're a beginner. So I think that partners, should realize that C-level people might be beginners in their job as being responsible for a project, and it makes more sense to help them, to educate them with do's and don'ts, rather than just looking for a confirmation. That's the one hand. I said there's 2 points. The second point is that still the business model of many traditional partners is selling services. And the best service to sell, that's what I have seen for long years, is customizations. So again, back to your question, if they talk with the traditional people on a lower position in the organization, these typically are the people that ask for customizations. So I think that some partners, conscious or unconscious, say if we continue to talk with IT and finance, then we hope that we still can find, long-lasting, expensive projects with lots of customization. And of course, the question now, with digital transformation and all the pressure that comes from the COVID-19 crisis, the question is, are you still able to find customers looking for long-lasting, complex, and expensive projects? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, and this maybe gets back to one of your earlier points. You have transformation, you have digitization. Can the same partner really carry out both sides of that? Do you see partners out there that are doing it? Should partners or should companies maybe even be realistic and consider focusing on one versus the other?
So I work with a number of partners that decided to split their company. Actually, I was very active in Microsoft project Road to Repeatability, R2R.
Right.
Later on, they changed names, like Microsoft seems to have a hobby to change names and terms, and then called it SureStep.
That is true.
SureStep for Dynamics. But I trained more than 150 different partners in 35 countries in this R2R program. And typically what we saw is that a number of those started splitting their business in two entities. Right? Might be two legal entities or just two departments, where one department was acting, let's say, in the traditional world, customizations, long-lasting projects, right? Existing customer base, helping those people, where the others were more focused on product. So you got project on the one hand and product on the other hand. And product was and still is seen as fast, standardized, focused on vertical markets, ideally on micro vertical markets, so not big but small specific markets, fast delivery, go in, deliver, and run away, go to the next. And then we've seen that, combining these two jobs in one person, as in I got one consultant that does complex projects with customizations on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and has to do a product implementation on Thursday, Friday, that seems to be a no-go. Same for salespeople. The salespeople that sell projects have a different DNA, a different mindset, different attitude than the ones that sell products. So I agree with your point. It's difficult to combine the two. Any partner will have a customer base and will be confronted with existing customers for quite a long time, right? But in the meantime, if they want to be successful in, as I call it, the new world, I think splitting these activities into entities might be a very good idea.
I can think of a couple of reasons why that might be challenging. And first of all, maybe we can also just clarify, when I think of road to repeatability, from what I remember of it, and SureStep, are you talking about that typically in the context of Dynamics NAV and now Dynamics 365 Business Central as sort of the core Microsoft technology that was kind of focused around, just for sort of clarity here?
Well, actually, the project was started, I think, 7 or maybe even 8 years ago for the NAV GP Solomon channel, so ERP for SMB, and later on it was also rolled out to the CRM channel. But to me, it's not so much for, let's say, a product approach. It's more the approach of a partner, as in, do I see myself as a technical company that's great in customizations? And tell me what you want, I can make everything. Or do I see myself as a company that wants to bring great technology to as many companies as possible by a more or less standard approach? That means I go in, I do my job, and I go to the next one. So for me, it doesn't have so much to do with specific products. That could be AX or F&O, that could be SharePoint, that could be a NAV or BC, right? It could be everything.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that makes sense. The other, so a couple of challenges. One is that comes to mind in this vision, and I'm thinking specifically in the sort of the SMB channel again. With the nature of engagements changing to some extent, with all cloud, with subscription licensing, some of the, the economics of the channel today compared to 5 or 10 years ago, I would guess that some partners say, well, we're under so much stress to keep everyone fully engaged, to have these short projects, to make things self-service as much as we can. Well, let me just throw the other part onto it that I was thinking of. We also have this new and different product landscape from Microsoft. Let's say we have Business Central for SMB ERP, and then we have the Power Platform, which is sort of the answer to almost all customizations that wouldn't be sort of traditional ERP, and now you want us to also break our company up into two parts. That's just, break our roles up at least into very distinct responsibilities. It's just too much. It's going to be too difficult to run a business that way. Do you hear that? Or am I just not well suited to be a partner?
Well, we're all human beings, Jason, and if you look at the human nature, I think change is not one of the best characteristics of our species. Let's be honest. And then we can see that on the average, business owners of Dynamics partner companies are not 16 or 22 years old, right? It's not good or bad, it's just an observation. I remember me doing a presentation on Directions EMEA a few years ago, and my session was about a healthy future of a partner channel and a partner business. And I think I had like 200 people in the room. And after a few minutes, I went a bit down to look at eye level on all the people sitting in the room. And I said, what do you think? I look at all your faces and the color of your hair. So on the average, what color do you think I see most? Then some people started laughing. And then somebody says, it must be gray, if there is any hair. I said, that's spot on, right? And that's just an observation. So what I see is that most people that started a NAV or business, they did that somewhere in the 90s, where the Danish people from Navision started to roll out their software first all over Europe and then later on worldwide. And people that jumped on the wagon were in their strength in their 35 to 40 years. Well, if you add like 40 years, 20 years more on that, 20 to 25, then no surprise, we can do the math. Right? On the average, business owners are of my age, right? So around 60 or more. And I said to the audience, right, if I see the color of your hair, I was planning to start talking for the next hour or so to you about SEO, search engine optimization, R2R, road to repeatability, standardization, and some more stuff. But really, if I look in your eyes, I think you're more up to thinking about a Harley Davidson, maybe a ponytail, and a younger girlfriend. And then a lot of people started laughing, and later on people said that was spot on. So here the question is, if you talk to an audience of owners that, build a business over time, What do you think? How open are they to change? How attracted are they by risk? But again, not changing, I think that's the dilemma. Not changing might create the biggest risk for them. So partners should change if they want, right? And I do a lot of presentations. I think you were in one of them last year at Summit. I like to start my presentation with pieces of music, relevant music. And one of my favorite introduction songs is a number from U2, and the number is With or Without You. And I start with the music and I say, guess what? Why did I choose U2? Well, it's a nice band, of course, but there's more great bands. And then why did I choose for this number? Because U2 has more great numbers. And then the message is, as I see it, the market is changing with or without you. So back to your point, do partners like to change and split their business and have all the hassle? No, not really. Some of them would love, still the cloud to go away and, work as they were doing for years ago. But hey, the market is changing with or without you. And I think your business is changing, my business is changing. We all have a choice. Do we want to follow, or do we want to stay left behind?
Yeah, I think, and I remember that presentation, and my recollection, it was probably, as I recall, it was maybe primarily customers, but there were probably some partners in that type of a session. And people definitely identified some of the issues, the points of tension that you were pointing out there. But I also got the sense a lot of them had not acted yet. How do partners get started sort of educating and inspiring their customers to act on some of these issues?
So I think most importantly, what my suggestion would be is stop thinking product. Don't believe that the world is waiting for your product. I often say there's nobody in the world that woke up this morning, opened the curtains, and said, today's a great day to buy a new ERP or a new CRM system. Nobody does it that way. We all know that. People consider new software upgrades, modernizing, what have you, because they have challenges, because there are things that they want to change, because something's broken. They want to be compliant. They want to achieve certain goals. But yet, if a partner gets a chance to start talking to customers, they open the laptop and they start product. If you visit Microsoft events like you do a lot, just like me, most of the first lines where Microsoft start, today I want to show you a product. They open the laptop and they start showing products. Even the vice president level from Microsoft people, if they do presentations on digital transformation, they start with the digital, and most of the time they only keep talking about the digital part, remember? And not the transformation part. So I would say Microsoft's a product company, and they probably will say, well, we got a partner channel to do the transformation part, but yet my observation is that most people in the channel also focus on product. My suggestion, if you have a first meeting with a customer, face-to-face, remote, what have you, don't open your laptop and start with basic questions. Who are you? What's your business? Are you doing fine, yes or no? What is your aspiration, your ambitions? Where do you want to be in 3 or 5 years? Right? Who is your biggest competitor? What are the top 5 reasons why you lose money? Right? Why do people want to work for you or leave you? Right? Why can't you sleep at night for business reasons? Right? What are what's your SWOT analysis? If you start talking with them and then start to find out what's their strategy, what's their customer goals, and from there start thinking how your solution could fit and support that, then I think we got a different approach than today, where we talk product in the beginning, product in the middle, and product in the end. And if I look at communication from partners, if you look at websites, right? Websites is product, product, product. It starts with product. It's a tsunami of functions and features. Unfortunately, if I ask customers how important is the product to you as part of your success that you want to achieve, most people say the product is like 20 or 30%, not more. And I say, why is that? I say, well, if I got the best product in the world, but there's no data in it, it's useless. If I got the best product in the world, there's data in it, but nobody is using it, it's useless. If I got the best product in the world with data and people know how to use it, but we use the flexibility to rebuild legacy processes as my father worked and my grandfather worked, again, no use. So I think it's good to realize that from a prospective point of view, a customer point of view, the product is a necessary thing. And of course, it should be a good product with innovation and a future and flexibility and integration. But the product is not the center of what we should do. The customer and the customer wishes right? The customer business goals, in my humble opinion, should be in the center. So back to your question, where and how could partners start? It could start by realizing that it's not about their product, but it's about where the customer wants to go. So the best point is, dear Mr. Customer or dear Mr. Prospect, what does success look like? What do you want to achieve? Tell me. And that's never staying within time and budget, because that's conditions. If you say, what do you want to achieve with your business? What's your strategy? And somebody says, I want to be the market leader. I want to grow 30%. I want customer satisfaction moving from 5.8 to 8.5. I want to double or triple my up and cross sell. I want to be compliant, right? Typically those kind of things that people will say. And from there, you can start talking on how your product and your services can support that. I think that's a much more logical approach. And I think that also differentiates you from many other vendors and other partners that, still live in the product world.
Yeah, that's great. And I believe, to sort of transition here a bit, you've been talking about some of these things very consistently over several years. You've been doing presentations, as we mentioned. You work with a lot of partners. You hold workshops, right? But now you also have a book. And I believe, maybe you could tell us a little more about it, but a lot of these very same themes are in the book, right? What was the main driver for writing the book?
Well, what I do is I travel a lot to be speaker or keynote speaker at partner events, which is great to do. But it also means a lot of traveling, a lot of energy, and a lot of time. And then my wife said, hey, if you talked so long and trained so many partners in repeatability, why don't you make your own presentation repeatable, right? Which makes sense. So I thought, why not make a book that describes my story about transformation, especially to help senior people, to help C-level people and business owners to make a success of transformation. Because we said in the beginning, in the best case, digital transformation is a business project and it's not an IT project. But let's be honest, most of those business owners always stood with their back to the project, right? They gave the budget, they signed the contract, and then they run away, start doing something else. So for them, it's pretty new. So I thought, if I make a book that could be helpful for them to at least understand what to do, and if they don't get it, take the book again and reread it. And then I thought, if you write a book for C-level people, it should be a small book, because most CEOs don't read books, right? Last time they did it was when they were in university, and most of them, the next time they do it is when they get retired, because in the meantime, they don't have the time to read business books, right? They might read books on holiday, but maybe not business books. So the book that I wrote is pretty flat, pretty small. It has 14 chapters and then 2 appendixes where you see the differences between digital projects and digital transformation projects. And it includes a self-assessment to see, am I ready as an organization, from mindset, from business processes, right, from attitude, am I ready to be part of a successful project? And if not, then they know what to do about that, right? So that was a reason to start writing that book. And actually, Jason, if you look at, let's say, the book and the theme of digital transformation, I think the biggest fail factor for digital transformation projects will be this. People modernize their IT, but in the same time, they sort of ignore their employees and they sort of ignore their processes. And this all starts on the customer side with the request for information. Right? If you look at an RFI, and most pre-sales consultants know these very thick books with 100,000 or multiple thousand questions, 99% of the questions are about the product. But when we just said the product is maybe 20, 30, let's say 40% responsible for success, it makes all the sense of the world to teach your customers to also raise questions about the other parts. So if I think about the biggest fail factor for digital projects in the world is to see it as just another IT project, to modernize IT, but to continue with your old legacy processes that are not efficient, that are not agile, and even worse, to continue with the old mindset in the heads of your employees. And that's what we hear. If you and I, we're customers all day. If you talk to vendors privately or business, a lot of them say, well, this is what it is, and we always do it this way, and no, we don't do this, or because they think inside out. So updating mindsets and teaching people to think outside in, to be on the side of customers, I think is super important. So for me, this starts with business processes. And ideally, that's what I write in the book, ideally, the project of the customer doesn't start with a request for information or looking at a demo from a Dynamics partner. Ideally, it starts internally defining goals and then start thinking, how can we make our processes simpler, more agile, faster? In the ideal world, Jason, this happens bottom up. So I've been working with end customers where they said to the different departments, design company 2.0, right? Please bring all your creativity, all your ideas, bring it up, what we can do to make it faster, to make it simpler. Because no customer in the world wants to do business with a complex company if a simple company offers the same. And you will never buy from a company that has 3 weeks delivery if somebody else can deliver the same for the same price in 3 days. So I think here's where it should start. Start with processes, start with mindset. And if you do that bottom up, it doesn't automatically mean that you have to do everything your people say, but at least then you get passion, you get energy, and then you don't have to force them to work in a different way because they're part of it. And I hear a lot of senior people saying, my people don't want to change. My staff, they're stubborn, they don't want to change. I think it's wrong. I feel that people really want to change. They're not idiots, no matter where they are in the organization. The only thing, they don't want other people to decide how they should change, right? They want to be part of it. They want to be taken seriously. They want to have a voice in it. So if you do that, start bottom up, include your people, and focus on deliver faster, cheaper, and reduce complexity, then I think your digital transformation project has the right starting points and it could be successful.
I have to say, maybe tied into some of those messages is, I think one of the plans that you have around how this book is going to get into the hands of, some of these end user organizations, you're actually encouraging Microsoft partners to purchase the book or get access to the book and educate not only their teams, but their customers with it and sort of use it as a piece of material for fostering those conversations. And I think that's a great idea because it can be, not every company is, or not every, business development person at a partner organization is really suited to just sort of lead that conversation on their own.
True. Well, it's not so much about selling a book, right? The book is just a book. And there's a lot of books. I think the point is that we should switch from product to customer. And the second thing, I think we should realize that most people that partners talk with are juniors. It's the first or the second time in their life that they're responsible for selecting and implementing a system on the customer side. And most people will never do it more often than 1 or 2 times. Actually, myself, I've been delivering what I call ERP masterclasses and CRM masterclasses since 2005. So that makes 15 years. And I did that in different countries with large numbers of groups, right? With hundreds and thousands of people. And I asked in every group, my first question was, show me your hand if you do this for the 3rd time or more. And guess what, Jason? I found out that more than 90%, that's 90, was doing this for the 1st or the 2nd time. And I also found out that the less than 10% were either interim managers or selection consultants. So they did it professionally. Mm-hmm. So I think we should realize they are beginners and they need help. Well, my youngest son would say, if somebody is responsible for something that is complex yet very crucial for the company and the continuity, and there's a lot of money involved, well, if they're juniors, it makes all the sense of the world to teach them where the pitfalls are, to teach them where the success factors are. Unfortunately, what I see is that most customers learn the pitfalls when it's too late. When the project's broken, they're disappointed, and then they sit in front of the partner, guided by a number of invoices that they didn't pay, and their legal advisor or their lawyer on the other side. And then the partner starts saying, well, you should have done this, you should have done that. Why not do that up front? So I believe that education is the missing part in what partners do today. Interesting observation. Last year at Directions EMEA, we had a panel discussion where the partner advisory board was on stage. I happen to be one of them. And I brought up the point that the business from partners is changing a lot, right? We see live in a day, very small, no hand or small touch implementations. We see change and organizational change projects. We see upgrades, right? So different kind of projects. And I said in Vienna on stage, I expected Microsoft to come up with a newer version of SureStep. And here's some confusion because Microsoft used the word SureStep as the successor of Road to Repeatability, SureStep for Dynamics. But as some of you can recall, SureStep was like 7 years ago the name for methodology. And in those days, Jason, partners could only be a gold certified partner if they had X number of people certified, passed the exam. So it was super important by then to work in a methodology, right? In a structured way to use your capacity best, don't make mistakes, and work for success. For the last few years, I've been trying to find the person in Corp who is responsible for SureStep implementation methodology. I can't find him or her. And I'm wondering if he or she is still alive or still in function. In other words, I think here's a role for Microsoft to expand, if you want, methodology to come up with a version 2.0 or 3.0 that includes education, inspiration, laptops closed, and start the conversation with business owners. I think that's crucial for having success in the near future.
So it sounds like you have not had much feedback or clues about where Microsoft really is headed to answer that kind of question for you.
Well, a lot of partners said that was a good topic. Thank you for raising the question. But it didn't lead yet to an answer from Microsoft. And it's not that they have to answer me. That's not the point. The point is, it's interesting that they still, as far as I saw it, didn't come up with the idea to modernize methodology, which means for me that today partners are struggling with this transformation part. And now we focus on upgrades, and I can imagine, right? There's 160,000 plus NEF customers, there's 40,000 plus Great Plains customers, there's 20,000 plus AX customers. They all need to move from on-premise to cloud. But does it make sense to modernize their IT and not their processes and not their mindset? Because then it's going to be old wine in new bottles. Waste of money, waste of time, right? So especially in these days, I believe that partners should pick up the transformation part themselves. And I foresee, Jason, a sort of split in the channel where we today have a lot of, or most all of the partners are focused on products, no matter if they're an SI or a VAR or ISV. But I see some partners that say, when I have discussions with them, I'm not interested in transformation because I focus on the D from digital in digital transformation. I see newborn in the cloud partners that say, we don't do products, we only do transformation services. That's the second category. And I see partners that said, I think we got the message. If we want to be successful in the future, we should become a one-stop shop doing both the D from digital products and the T from transformation. So for all people that listen to this podcast, I think it's an interesting strategic discussion. What's the type of company you want to be in 3 to 5 years? Are you still the technology company that's looking for customers with big budgets for big customizations? Are you going to be a transformation company without the technology, or are you going to be both? And what does that mean for people, for skill set, for mindset, for communication, or what have you?
I would just add, in thinking back to where I've heard the most insightful observations about how to really be smart about some of these challenges, the ones you're talking about. I've heard some very insightful comments and feedback from particular customers who I've heard speak or just had conversations with, people who do have just a very good grasp of some of those strategic questions you mentioned. And then there's also people like you and some partners that are really doing it right today. But it's a very interesting mix of where that wisdom sort of lives today and how, I don't know, how it's going to become either more formalized or more available.
Let me give an example of a company that recently invited me to help them. It was a company worldwide active, 24 countries, headquartered in Austria in Europe. And they started using AX3.0, I think it was like 18 years ago. Company was 200 people, small but fast growing. What they did, like many customers, they used the strongest point of AX and the strongest point of all Dynamics products, it's the flexibility. So they got customizations like an idiot, and they ended up, like 70 years later, with a company 800 people, so 4 times bigger, 24 offices all over the world, and every office had their own version. And they came to a point that the organization couldn't grow anymore, right? Because there were 24 silos, and the one left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. And even in one hand, the left finger didn't know what the thumb was doing, so to speak. And then the management decided we go for standardization, not just standardization of software, But underlying, we need standardized processes all over the world in all our offices. Because a customer today that has contacts with 3 different countries get 3 different outputs and definitions and documents and what have you. So they said we need to standardize, otherwise we cannot continue to grow. Interesting observation, when they implemented AX 18 years ago, the project had the name ERP. So it was a product implementation. And over the time, they learned that it's not about the product, but about their destiny. So this time they called the project Everest, like Mount Everest, large mountain, right? So we have to climb the mountain. It's not easy, but once we're at the top, the views are astonishing. And they took a project time of 3 years, 36 months, way more than in the past, right, to standardize the processes and get everybody on board on that. It cost them a fortune. And the most interesting thing to me, what they did, all the huge amounts of money they spend on customizations are thrown out. They say we go back to the standard. If we need extra functionality, it must be standard, like in add-ons, that is, proactively upgraded, standardized, documented, tested, and what have you. We don't want customizations anymore. So there was a huge, let's say, dilution of capital, right, to go back to the standard. Well, that's interesting if you're a partner and next time you talk with such a customer, you start talking about how great you are in customizations. Is that really what people want to hear? And I see customizations that go so long that projects take a year or 2. I see even in the NAV BC world, I see upgrades that take 1,000 man days, 2,000 man days. I recently saw one case with 4,000 man days. Jason, if you do 4,000 man days with a project team of 2 full-timers, by the time you're up and running, and every 6 months there's a new version, they're already 6 or 8 versions behind.
Right.
We can't continue this way anymore, right? So we have to rethink and we have to rebuild. And then if the business owner likes it or not, and depends on the color of the hair, it's not important. The market is changing. It must be faster. It must be more standardized. It must be focused on their strategy and not so much focused on what the product can do for you. And that's a big change, let's be honest.
Yeah, not one that will flip overnight. As you said, I still hear as well, big customization projects based on Business Central, just like they were in NAV. I mean, those still go on, and it'll be some time, I think, before if those do end up becoming more rare.
Yep, true. So I believe, right, this book could be helpful in understanding what's going on. I see partners that use the book, create their own version of the book. I thought, let's not make a standard book because then everybody has the same. So it's a set of content and partners can create their own book, give it their own title, make different books per vertical if they want, take their own preface in it. If they want, they can add vertical examples in the right language, right? Because some talk about members and some say citizens and some say customers. So that's all what you can change so that you create your own book. And then I would think the next step is use the book to start educating prospects. And actually, I work with a few partners in Germany as we speak, and they start delivering masterclasses, digital transformation masterclasses, or change masterclasses for existing customers, and they invite the management of their customers, and they charge money for that. So it's not just pre-sales anymore, it's not a demo, but they say this is valuable content that could make the difference between gold and silver medal, between success and failure if you want. And what I see is they don't get just the IT and finance people in their rooms. Of course, they are there, but they also get broader management and they got HR people because it's about change and process and change. So it's a great way, I think, to educate customers, but also to educate potential customers. And of course, right, if they see that you're able to do transformation, to talk about transformation, to inspire them, and so use content like a book, right? Use checklists to help them. Then it makes sense that they also want to talk with you about the D from digital transformation, the product side. So, I could be instrumental in helping there because that's what I do for some partners. Some other partners, we did train the trainer. They acquire the content and start doing it themselves. And some people do it on their own. That's all fine. It's not about my book. It's not about my content. I think it's about the mindset that people start understanding, stop talking product, close your laptop, and put your customer central and their business goals in your digital transformation.
Excellent. Yeah. And where can people find out more information about the book if they want to learn more?
I do have an email address, of course. So the G from Guus and the K from Krabbenborg, gk@dynamicsandmore.com. is one way, and you can find me on LinkedIn. That might be the easier way. And then I have a set of information with the chapter, the index, and gives you an idea about the book and how to use it if you're interested in doing that.
And we'll include some links and references in the podcast description as well if people want to check there. Well, Guus, thank you so much for talking today. It's always fun to talk about these topics and to hear from you and your latest work. Congratulations on the book. I mean, I love the model that you're using and the topics too. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you, and have a great day.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks to Guus for joining me today. If you have any feedback or want to get in touch, please reach out by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @msdynamicsworld. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.